This is the city of Fort Worth in the state of Texas. This is the Foundry District on the west side of the city. This is Doc's Records. This is Craftwork Coffee. These are all the little mantras you can find written in all the little corners of the neighborhood. This is the intersection of Weisenberger and Carroll. And this is the Granbury Theater. Just over a year ago, I sat down with owner Jimmy Sweeney to talk about the economics of art houses and what it's like opening up a theater in the age of streaming services. I had the chance to sit down with him recently for a follow-up interview to talk about the theater's opening and its overall first year of business. So, a year ago, we were sitting basically where we are right now, but it looked very, very different.
Very different.
It was basically just... It was a shell. It looked like just a warehouse, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And now, here we are.
Here we
inside
are.
this beautiful theater. Congratulations, man.
Thanks.
Tell me how this last year has been.
Man, it's been so up and down, and in a lot of good ways. You know, there's a lot of highs and a lot of lows to running a small business.
Absolutely, yeah.
Things are day to day, but it has been so exciting to get to provide this experience for Fort Worth and to get to be a voice in the community that hopefully pushes people's opinions and worldviews a little bit further. And so, I mean, when I think back on a year since we talked, like, it has been a really positive thing.
That's awesome.
And really encouraging.
That's awesome. So we recorded the last interview in January. And
Yes.
I think at that point you guys didn't have a set opening date, but I think if I remember correctly, you were saying around like March or April. When was the actual opening date?
August 23rd was when we officially got our certificate of occupancy and could open up.
Okay.
Yeah, we started showing movies right at the beginning of August, late July.
Okay. Well, real quick, what was the first movie you guys showed?
So the first movie that we watched in here while we were putting together couches was Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Nice.
Just pulled up Netflix, and it was one of the suggested things, and it was like, you know what, that sounds good. That's a crowd pleaser.
That's got to be the best feeling in the world. Especially after this whole process, getting everything, working with the city, working with getting the screen up, getting the projector set, and then finally watching a movie in your theater. It
was so surreal, and it's still surreal. But just that moment of oh, there's a movie on now,
yeah, exactly.
And we did this and we figured out how to put this together.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Was there a specific reason or multiple reasons for that delay that meant that you guys started in August? Was there anything specific?
Not necessarily. Just so many little things, especially with contractors, and the way that they usually build out their schedule is which I learned through this process, is that they put together their map of okay, this is when the plumber is going to be ready, this is when the electrician is going to be ready, and then if one person misses, it sort of snowballs. Okay. But all of those subcontractors have time lined up for all these different projects, and so if you miss your window, that means you go to the back of their line. And so gotcha. Okay. Just little things where
it all just kind of adds
up. Electrician didn't show up, or plumber didn't show up, and then all of a sudden it's oh, well, that means that we're 4 weeks later on that person's schedule before they can get back to us.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That seems frustrating, but it's understandable, though.
Yeah, it's one of those, I learned a lot of patience through this process.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are so many things in this and in life that are just outside of our control. And if you want to control things that you have no power over, then you're going to spend a lot of time pulling your hair out.
That's true. Very true. So tell me what the whole experience has been like, especially since opening, of marketing the theater has been like. Do you guys have you been doing any sort of community events? You're here in the Foundry District. So tell me about that experience. What has it been like just getting the word out about the theater?
Yeah, so we started out doing a lot of like paid social media advertising, some print and online ads, targeted digital ads. And there was some fruit from those things, but for the most part, what we have found that worked the most was community partnerships, and so finding other businesses that we can overlap with to do events, and really just Google. Honestly, like just having showtimes on Google and Fandango, where when people Google, I want to go see Parasite, like we just pop up as the first thing.
Was that something? Did you have to have that done, or like submit something for that, or was it natural?
For Google, there's a program that you have to do it through, and so yeah, there's sort of a middleman to it. It's a very clunky program. It usually takes like 24 hours to adjust. So if there's something that changes, people will still see different things on a ticketing site or our website versus what they see on Google. And so it can be a little bit frustrating, and sometimes they'll just flat out show the wrong thing on there. But as far as Fandango goes, it's just like a thing we set active in our point of sale system. But that, I would say 80 to 90% of our audience finds us through those things. And so we took a step back on everything else. Like we said, okay, this like print advertising, not really doing anything for us. Facebook and Instagram, like unless you have hundreds of thousands of dollars to throw at it, it's just a waste of money. Because then they limit the impressions that your other posts are getting, so that you will pay to advertise those, so that you increase impressions. And so really we've just turned into word of mouth, community partnerships, and Google advertising. And that's seemed to be working out well for us. So we did a Harry Potter marathon back in October, and Leaves, which is a tea and bookshop over off of South Main, they do a Harry Potter read aloud every year, and so we coordinated times for that. And with that, they also make a butterbeer tea, and so awesome. we had that over here, and had a partnership to where if you were one of their out loud readers, then you could come get a ticket to any showtime for free, and then if you came here, you could get a discount on your tea by bringing your ticket stub. And that was a lot of fun. I mean, the Harry Potter marathon in general was fun, and getting to decorate the place, but getting to incorporate other people. We've done a couple things with Craftwork right next door.
That seems like a pretty natural connection.
Yeah, back in, I think it was November, we did a morning where we had coffee, watched If Beale Street Could Talk, and then had a conversation about it afterwards.
How does that usually work? Like, is it like somebody like up with a microphone leading a sort of, tell me how it works.
Yeah, for that one, we honestly just moved the couches around to where we were all in a circle.
Oh, that's awesome.
I and one other person were leading discussion with it. When we do our film club every month, I just turn one of these couches around and face the audience, and we talk about it. There's a time and a place for like having people up on a panel versus just like, I want to be on the same level as people talking about this film. And so we have done a couple discussions where we had people relevant to the film, or just to organizations in the area come and do more of a Q&A style event. The beginning of February, we did Cabin in the Sky from 1943, which still to this day is one of the only all-black casts that MGM has ever done. And we had leaders from the Denton Black Film Institute, a couple TCU professors that teach in race studies here to have a conversation about the portrayal in that movie and what it means to be portrayed on screen in 2020.
So tell me a bit about, one of the things we talked about last time was just simply the day-to-day operations of what it's like running an art house theater. It's much different than running an AMC or a Cinemark. It's, you don't have 35 17-year-olds running around. So tell me a little bit about the day-to-day operations. How many full-time people on staff are there besides yourself? Or if any?
It's just me.
Just you, okay.
We have 6 part-time employees, and so I spend most of my time up here during the Monday to Friday 10 to 6ish, covering the afternoon show times, which naturally, like any movie theater, they don't have as many people,
right.
Unless it's a holiday. And then our employees usually cover more 5 p.m. on and weekends.
Okay. How many hours do you think you work in a given week? Or well, let me rephrase. How many hours are you here in a given week?
45 to 50.
Okay, so honestly, less than I expected.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say I spend plenty of mental headspace
Right.
outside of that, working.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important for any organization to have balance. If I, at the top running the theater, am not able to balance work and outside life, then I'm not going to be able to set up an environment that's conducive to our employees being able to do the same thing.
Sure.
And if our employees aren't happy, then they're not providing the experience that we want our patrons to have.
Yeah. Do you anticipate any of that changing in terms of bringing somebody on to fulfill some of the things you're doing now so that you can concentrate on other things in the future?
Yeah, I would say in the very short term, we're looking at hiring a manager to that can take on a lot of the scheduling, day-to-day
Right.
sort of things, so that I can take a little bit more of a step back and have more capacity to put into programming.
Okay.
And some marketing as well. I think that's the big thing is we have people that come and are like, oh, it would be so cool if you did this. I'm like, yeah, it would be so cool to do that. I can already see 20 to 30 hours of time going into
Yeah,
that. And I just don't have the space to do that. And so that'll be really helpful for us as far as planning events and organizing more event style cinema.
Gotcha.
That will be a big difference.
Okay. Is there, obviously there are many different moving aspects in a given day to running a theater. Is there one or two things that tend to occupy your time more so than others?
Trying to think of how to say this without being mean to people. People ask a lot of dumb questions. And
That's true.
It's very hard for me to not be in the mindset that if you're asking me a low effort question, I'm going to give you a low effort answer. I spend a good amount of the day responding to emails, people asking, when are you going to be playing this? When are you showing this? Even though that information is probably already on our website.
Exactly.
And so that's just learning some patience with that. And then a majority of my day, I would say I probably spend trying to think about how we can position ourselves and plan events and bring in week-long runs that we think people will want to be engaged with.
So more strategic kind of stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things we talked about last time was the way that you anticipated. Well, one of the things we specifically talked about was how the majority of movie theaters tend to make more of their revenue from concessions as opposed to ticket sales. But you had mentioned that you anticipated that for this theater, it would be a little bit more of a split between ticket sales on one end and concessions and alcohol on the other. Has that proven to be true?
I would honestly say that it's pretty close to 50-50.
Okay.
And the big reason that we can operate differently from your Cinemark is that if they're bringing in whatever blockbuster, they're probably paying Buena Vista or Disney 65 to 80% of ticket sales,
Right.
where we are paying 35 to 50. And so that does make a big difference as far as that sort of revenue, and it makes it so that we don't need to try to like add a restaurant and have waiters walking around, because that's what their goal is they know that they have to continue to sell these concessions and push these meals to be able to pay for the movies that they have coming in. And so I would say that it is split pretty close to 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's aligned with your expectations up front.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Another one of the things we talked about last time was just simply the whole process of what it's like talking to distributors and building relationships with studios and actually just physically getting the films that you're able to show them. How has that been, building relationships and talking to distributors and all that? Yeah,
it's been interesting. There's an ebb and a flow to it. And especially now that we feel like we're hitting our stride, like we destroyed the Movie Tavern and the Cinemark with Parasite the week after it came out. So we were already playing it. They both picked it up starting that Friday just for the weekend, and we significantly outsold them, awesome. Which is really cool. Yeah. And that's the thing that we can come to our distributor and say, hey, like, we did better than them. So instead of opening their 1 week early, like, open with us and give it to them 1 week after. Gotcha. And obviously there's still there's a level of they want to be in a Cinemark or an AMC, and like be able to pitch that to the films that they're buying. Right. But if we can come to them and say, hey, you gave us this movie at the same time that you gave it to them, and we did better with it. Uncut Gems with A24 was one of those this year where it was like, we opened it on Christmas, the Palace 9 opened it on Christmas, Ridgemar Mall opened it on Christmas, and we held it for like 5 weeks versus a week and a half or 2 weeks for them. But even in that block of time that we were overlapping, if we're equal to or greater than them, that's something that we get to go back to our distributors and say, hey, we're a better home for this than they are. Or even pitch the idea of, hey, maybe you can give this to us exclusively, and we can pull that audience into here. Gotcha. So there are times where I will email someone who I have a good relationship with and think that I'm in good standing with, and they'll tell me, oh, we accidentally already promised this to somebody else. And that's frustrating that it's like, we picked up your other 10 movies that they didn't pick up. Right. And so that still happens, and when that happens, it's a moment of like, okay, that sucks, and maybe I just won't even pick up that film, not to send a message, but just as like, hey, I'm still going to be here for your other stuff. Right. So yeah, it goes back and forth. Gotcha. So one thing I forgot to ask last time is the whole process of scheduling films and talking to distributors. About how long does that last? So like, we're recording this at the end of February. Are you talking to distributors right now just about, say, March, or are you going so far as scheduling, movies in the summertime? We have a few things on the calendar in May already. April, I think we already have at least something every week. But even I scheduled a movie for March 20th to the 22nd last night. Okay. And so it really does, if we can see like a gap in our calendar, like we'll do some last minute searching around to find something that we think would play well and see if there's somebody we can partner on with it. And so it can be anything from 2 weeks out to 3 or 4 months. Gotcha. Does anything ever get canceled or dropped for any reason? No, there will be times, and distributors are pretty flexible with this, where I'll email them and say, hey, I know we scheduled it for this week, can we move it back a week? And especially in platform releases, moving it back is pretty easy. Okay. If I ever have to try and ask to move something up, I will probably get a little bit of resistance from that, just because they have a target for what markets they want to be in. Gotcha. But even one example recently, like Extraordinary, I wasn't sure when we were going to get Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I knew it was going to be mid-March. I already had Extraordinary on the calendar for the 13th. I had a hunch I was going to get Portrait that week, so I asked Extraordinary if I can move them back to the 20th. They were like, yeah, that's fine. Found out we weren't getting Portrait till the 20th, so then emailed Extraordinary and was like, hey, can we move this back up to the 13th? They were like, yeah, that's great. And so there is some flexibility in moving around that happens, especially with the smaller releases.
Gotcha. Okay, final lightning round here. First off, what is your personal favorite film that you've gotten to show here so far?
I mean, Parasite's really hard to top.
Absolutely.
And especially for how long we've been able to show it. Having people come in that are like, I was scared to read subtitles. And I'm not saying that to like make fun of or make light of that, but that is a real thing that people walked in saying, and getting to provide that experience of like, this is a safe place for you to come and try reading subtitles for the first time. I know that you're going to enjoy it. I know you're going to enjoy the movie. Now come back and see something else we have subtitles on. So I really loved Parasite. I loved Rafiki, that came out. That was the first movie that we showed to an audience. And it is a just really beautiful, colorful, well shot, well written film from Kenya that carries a lot of cultural significance to them. And so that's one that I think about where I'm like, I know that not many people saw this, but it is one that I really enjoyed being able to show.
That's awesome. What would you say through this whole process, which, okay, so you guys opened August 2019. At what point would you say that you started, that you said like, okay, this is actually something I'm going to pursue?
It was April 2018.
Okay, so not about a year and a half, roughly.
Yeah.
So the whole process, were there any big misconceptions that you've had, especially since opening?
I think I had a misconception of being able to get people to come and see things other than the bigger releases. And I think that's part of us trying to pitch that we are an experience outside of just the movie. Because bringing in Parasite, Uncut Gems, The Lighthouse, like that pays for the opportunity for us to bring in what we just closed, Goldie, and other like foreign films we have coming up, like Zombie Child and Balloon. And I would love to see people start responding and engaging with the content that we put out there about those. And we do get some engagement, but it usually doesn't convert into people coming. And while I love getting to show people Parasite, I really love getting to show something that I feel has a poignant message about the cultural landscape of Fort Worth, Texas, the United States, worldwide at this time, and could really spark conversation in the area. So I was maybe a little bit naive about how easily I would be able to get people to come in and see those smaller titles.
And then now talk to me about what you want the future to be like for the Granbury Theater. You mentioned off camera before about potentially expanding at some point.
Yeah, I think that we would love to push this location into being a consistent landmark of the community here, where people know that they can come and they're going to see something that sparks a thought or conversation, and is safe and engaging. We do hope to be able to expand. I think Fort Worth in and of itself has the market to bring in a couple more screens. And obviously we learned lessons with opening this. I think that we could do it even better, and then sort of provide a niche for this space versus another space. And then I really think that there's a lot of, especially in Texas, there's these like B-level cities where people don't go like, oh, like I'm gonna go on vacation to Tyler, Texas. Or I'm
I've
gonna
done
go.
that.
Yeah.
What's in Tyler?
Yeah. I'm gonna go to Arlington. I'm going to go to. I mean, El Paso is basically on an island by itself,
Right,
or
yeah.
Lubbock, but they're hubs of people. Like they have a population.
But you're never going to see an Alabama Draft House there.
Right. And so I think that there's an opportunity for somebody to step into that space in a low overhead environment where you can operate, not necessarily like stringently, but you have to be frugal, but in a smart way where you can provide an experience like this, so that you continue to open up markets to distributors. And I think that's a unique opportunity that is out there right now, where as all of this new content is being put out, people are just looking for audiences for it. And so if you can start saying like, hey, I'm gonna open up the market for Tyler, which has 120,000 people there and is sort of a hub for East Texas, or I'm going to be, right around some like bigger state universities and provide like that younger audience. I think that there's opportunity there. And we would love to be the ones to do that, whether it is us or not. I hope that somebody recognizes that and wants to take that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, last question. So this whole process, right about 2 years ago you started. If you could go back and talk to yourself when this was just an idea, is there any piece of advice or any big warning sign even, or encouragement or anything like that, any sort of advice that you'd give yourself a couple of years ago?
It's a good question. There is a lot of pressure to running a small business that you don't have when you work as part of a corporation. Like it's easy to know that you're going to have a paycheck, right, and be able to like pay the people working for you. With a small business, that's all on you, and you bear the weight of that. And so it has been a huge growing process of being able to manage the level of like stress that comes with that. And so I think that I've always been an independent person, and I figured that would just sort of translate. And it has in some ways, but I wish that I could tell myself that you're going to have to learn what it means to bear the pressure of signing people's paychecks and paying people that give you movies and paying suppliers. And you have to get people in here to pay for that. Gotcha. And so if there's a week or a day that goes by that's slow, like you can't let that get to you. You have to keep pushing forward, figure out what didn't work about that and how you can promote it better or strategically place it better the next time.
Gotcha. Jimmy Sweeney, thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
You're starting Parasite in like 20 minutes or something?
Yeah, we've still got Parasite running.
If I just stay and watch?
For sure.
Perfect.
You guys are welcome to.
Excellent. Thanks so much.